Hi, and welcome to the Industry 4.0 Club. I'd like to wish a good local time to everyone. Before we start, I'll let you know a little bit about us and today's conversation. The main purpose of the Industry 4.0 Club is to accelerate the evolution to Industry 4.0 by engaging the power of diverse talent worldwide. This is Women in Manufacturing, our Tuesday conversation with a focus on tech and manufacturing. In this space, we discuss the perspectives and challenges of women at work and at home. In this series of Discovering Women in Manufacturing, we're taking a look at unique roles in the industry, and our topic of today is the art of putting a face on manufacturing. This is the final episode of this summer series as we approach the final few days officially of summer. I'm Carol Mitchell-Lin, an Industry 4.0 Club co-founder, and for over 6 years I've been creating content for I-40 adoption in manufacturing. When I'm not supporting my fellow co-founders, I'm a content marketing specialist at Fuse Data in Toronto, Canada, where we help organizations gain better insights with a people-first approach to enterprise data analytics. First, I'd like to introduce my co-host and fellow I-40 Club co-founder, Grace Donovan. Hi, Grace.
Morning. Hi, Carol. Good afternoon if you're tuning in at lunch. As Carol mentioned, I'm a co-founder of the Industry 4.0 Club, and I've been Carol's co-host for almost 2 years. And I am currently the executive director of the Rural Engagement and Vitality Center, which is a nonprofit focused on creating thriving economies in rural areas, specifically in rural Oregon. So I'm really excited to be here today and speak with our guest.
Thanks, Grace. And yes, we're pleased to have Whitney Koch as our special guest. Hi, Whitney. We really appreciate you taking time to be with us today.
Hey, good morning. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, welcome. We're going to put you center stage here. There we go. Oh, not me. All right. We're good. So, Whitney, we'd love to learn a little bit more about you and kind of introduce you to our audience. So could you tell us kind of your career history and kind of what brought you on this journey into manufacturing and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, certainly. So my career started out actually in public education. I studied a foreign language in college and wasn't really sure what to do with that. and sort of landed in education because I had such a good experience learning that language in high school myself, and had some really meaningful relationships with my former teachers. And I was in education for 4 years, and then, just sort of realized as much as I enjoyed working with my students and teaching them this language that, I loved so much, it wasn't my lifetime career. And I worked with a local job ministry and discovered this field of technical writing, which was totally new to me. I'd never heard of it before. And through that group was connected with my former employer, which is a small family-owned manufacturing company in Sugar Land. So that's the greater Houston area where I live. And I was their technical writer for about 5.5 years. And after that, just really wanted to do something a little bit different, something a little more creative within the company. So I transitioned over into the marketing department, still writing, but really focused more on building out our web content. And then during the pandemic, my focus really shifted to our social media presence. And I am now with Keystone Click, a digital marketing agency, as an account manager and content writer, focusing on our manufacturing clients.
So it's a really unique trajectory. And
yeah.
And that language that you were learning was German, correct?
Yes.
Did that have any influence or bearing kind of on coming into manufacturing? And the reason I ask is just because within the Industry 4.0 world, like there's so much kind of influence and interchange between, North America and Europe, kind of Germany more specifically. So I'm curious if there was any influence there.
No, there wasn't. And I really didn't even consider myself part of manufacturing until, I don't know, maybe the last 3 years or so. The company I was with is a manufacturing company in the oil and gas space, but they were always, living in the Houston area. There's so much talk of oil and gas. And so that was really kind of more of their identity was oil and gas. And that's what I identified with a little bit more, especially since my father was a petroleum engineer for over 40 years. That just made a stronger connection to me than manufacturing. And then, once I moved into marketing and worked with the company leadership more closely, one of the things that we talked about was, trying to kind of rebrand the company a little bit as more of a manufacturing company. So to break out of just being known for oil and gas and, being able to just be known as more of a manufacturing company. So that's still a little bit newer to me, honestly.
Whitney, you talked about part of the journey with them was putting a face on manufacturing. Making it about the people rather than the manufacturing, the industry vision. And it resonated with us, and we really wanted to, when we first met, and we really like to bring that conversation now for the people that are listening, because we really liked how you framed that.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I didn't even really consider myself part of manufacturing until more recently, when I got connected with some larger manufacturing groups. And even before working with that company, I really didn't know much about manufacturing. I sort of had like a general idea of manufacturing, but didn't think about it very much, unless it came into the headlines, sort of like right now where we've got the auto workers strike. And I never really spent much time thinking about how things were made. And so then being in a manufacturing company and working in social media and, digital marketing, I just really came to understand how important storytelling is really to all companies, but then I think even more so to manufacturing, because there is kind of like this big gap, right? We all benefit from the work of manufacturers, but I would venture to say that most of us don't really think much of manufacturing unless you live maybe in an area where manufacturing is the dominant industry. Kind of like me living in the Houston area, and oil and gas is like the big thing. And so storytelling and putting a face on manufacturing, I think, is, I don't know, a big missed opportunity for a lot of manufacturing companies. You think about TikTok right now. So I'm sure a lot of manufacturing companies would say that, TikTok isn't a channel for them, but the manufacturing category on TikTok has 3.2 billion views on TikTok alone. So like people kind of want to see how the sausage is made, for lack of a better term. That's interesting to people. And I think, whenever you're in the industry, maybe you get, I don't know, kind of blind to how it could be interesting to outsiders because it's your day in and day out reality. But those things are interesting to people. And I also think, thinking ahead to the next generation and with manufacturing facing like the gray wave and really, already sort of struggling with a smaller workforce and needing to hire people, getting out there and putting a face on manufacturing and showing what manufacturing is actually like in 2023 is a huge opportunity. And, it's not B2C, right? But in B2B, I think it's still important to remember that people buy from people, and telling your story and making yourself visible, in your local community through your digital presence, that makes a difference. It really goes a long way to building that know, like, trust with, people that you serve through your, whatever it is you manufacture, and then also the people who buy from you.
There's so many good tidbits within that answer. And I think one of the things that came to mind was just, like the kind of TikTok views of manufacturing. There's some really specific niche segments of TikTok manufacturing that would rack up millions and millions of views. So definitely want to encourage manufacturers who are considering it as an option to 100% go for it. People are fascinated by some of the stuff that's going on.
It's really so cool to watch. Yeah. Like, I mean, you never really think about, like in food manufacturing facilities, like how things are packaged. I mean, it's just really cool to watch. It's like those oddly satisfying videos.
Exactly. Exactly. So I just wanted to highlight that and kind of reaffirm that point. And I also wanted to ask a little bit more about how you guys are going about putting faces to manufacturing. Like, what are the kinds of stories that you're experimenting with or have found that work really well to kind of humanize manufacturing or make it more visible? What are some of the things that you guys have done?
Yeah, so at my previous employer, one thing that I did is I would highlight an employee each month on our social media channels and then also internally. So I would just sit down with them for maybe maximum of an hour and just talk to them about their life, like not so much about what they did within the company, although that was certainly part of it, but just to get to know them on a more personal level and how they ended up there doing what they did. And that was really fascinating. It was one of my favorite things to do in my previous role, and just to get to know my coworkers on a deeper level. And so then I would take that information and write up kind of a profile of them to share on our social media. And I think it's just important to show that there are people in your company and that they're real people and not just their job title. I think there's a lot of emphasis on maybe showcasing senior leaders and salespeople, but beyond that, I think a lot of those other departments don't really get I don't know, they're just not talked about very much. But aside from maybe on a company page saying like our people are what makes us who we are, but then you never talk about your people. You've got to make sure that you're showcasing them, and that's important, to your potential customers. And then also it just does so much internally for morale and feeling like you're part of something. And, it was really cool to see sharing those internally. Like, then it wasn't just me that knew that about that coworker, right? Like, the rest of my employees had that opportunity to get to know them on a deeper level than you would just, talking around the water cooler. So I think it's just a great way to humanize a company. And that's something that I'm also trying out with one of my manufacturing clients this month. So trying to do a special kind of spotlight post and see how that works for them. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, that not only does it kind of really literally give a face to manufacturing, but it also adds to like somewhat of a social cohesion and team building internally.
Yeah.
Which when we talk about, the challenge, like you mentioned, the gray wave that's coming on, or just some of the challenges that a lot of manufacturers may have with turnover, that kind of creating that sense of community and a little bit more of a sense of belonging, whether, that's on the shop floor or kind of throughout the company, is really important to kind of reduce and mitigate some of those effects.
Yeah.
So it's not just marketing, right? Like it goes.
Yeah. And I think it's also a form of representation too, especially like if you're hiring and, I think it's important for manufacturers to know that, people who are looking to apply at your company are checking out your website, your social presence, and they're looking at those things. And so if they come across a post like that, and maybe they have something in common with an employee that was spotlighted, it makes it a little bit easier for them to sort of make a connection and potentially see themselves at that company as well. So I think there's that representation aspect, and just knowing like, it's a diverse company, or there's people from all different kinds of backgrounds, or hey, this person studies something totally different and now they're in manufacturing, so maybe I can do that too. I think it just covers so many different things.
Go ahead, Carol. Sorry.
Some companies also like to bring people together physically. For example, they'll have factory tours to bring people in the community, or STEM related tours, or they'll also do outreach within the community for volunteering or helping social organizations. Have you seen any examples of this, either within the community there, or yourself at Kellogg?
Yeah. So at my previous employer, that was definitely something that I was wanting for us, especially like we were a member of the local Chamber of Commerce. And, to me, that's sort of like a no-brainer to just show up to Chamber of Commerce meetings and, show people that you're there and you're engaged in the community. But thinking about, October is manufacturing month. So that's a great opportunity for manufacturing companies to, reach out to maybe like their local school district. And if they have a career in technology department, and see if they're able to partner with them, support them, offer a tour. The Women in Manufacturing Texas chapter is working on factory tours. And I know like up in Dallas, Karen Rivera, who I see is in the comments, has done a lot of work working with, the local school districts and other like STEM groups, just to try and open the doors and expose more students to manufacturing. Kind of going back to what I said earlier, like I really didn't know anything about manufacturing, and I still don't honestly know. Like there's just so much to know. But when I was in school, and it might just be part of where I grew up and like the population that we had, but it was pretty much like you just go to college. And that was sort of the only option that was really presented. There wasn't really much talk about the trades or any other type of opportunities or career fields. Everything was just kind of white collar, which, not that there's anything wrong with that. We need all types of roles. But, if there had been some kind of opportunity where there was like a local manufacturing company either being present at maybe a career fair, or opening themselves up for a tour, like for Manufacturing Day, I can only imagine what the difference would have been, just knowing that there are other opportunities out there. So big opportunity.
Yeah. This is a great time to kind of showcase. So we got some folks in the comments. So Manufacturing Day, as was mentioned, is coming up on the 6th. Thank you, Courtney, for shouting that out.
Way to go, Courtney.
And Karen provided a whole list of resources, so go ahead and click on that. But this question really ties in with our next one. So it's really, how can manufacturers stay up to date with social media trends and changes? And then kind of with your experience in languages, how has that, helped you become a better storyteller? What tips would you give to people to improve their storytelling so that they can drive that engagement right on social media and in marketing? Because manufacturers are good at making things, and that might not always translate to storytelling, or that might be just a little bit, outside of their wheelhouse. So
yeah, for sure. I think in manufacturing, there's just sort of a lack of understanding and appreciation for marketing. It seems like the focus is really just on sales, but sales and marketing, really need each other.
Oh, yeah.
And and just to sort of think that marketing is something that can be done just every now and then, or just getting us ready for a trade show, I think is really doing a disservice to your company. And so if you don't have the bandwidth internally to have a marketing department, or even if you do, but maybe it's just a solo marketer, just to consider outsourcing and like partnering with an agency so you get some extra support, and some folks who really know what it means to tell a story and who can ask the right questions to sort of dig out what is most important to your audience or what your audience really wants to hear from you. Because again, like when you're in it day to day, it's really easy to just overlook or discount those things. But yeah, having an outside perspective can be really helpful. And I know in my previous position, we had kind of talked about partnering with an agency before, and we were sort of like, but they don't know us. They don't know what it's like to be here. And I think it's really easy to, think that no one outside your organization can really understand. And I mean, I think that's true to a degree. They're obviously not there day to day, but outside perspective really is beneficial in so many ways. So I think just realizing that manufacturing is, that marketing is something that you can't overlook, and that isn't just for every now and again, but should be, it's a legitimate business function. And, if you really want your organization to succeed, then it deserves the same amount of attention as, operations or engineering or accounting, sales. It's important. And if it's not you as the leader, if you don't really get marketing, that's fine. So find people who do, and trust them to do what they do best.
So in the same vein, Karen has another question, which is, what are some common social media mistakes manufacturers should avoid?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the biggest mistake is just like completely discounting social media. I heard that a lot in my previous role, is just thinking like, well, social media isn't for us. Social media is a fad. And it's like, well, it's 2023. So like I've had my Facebook account for almost 20 years. Like it's not, it's not going anywhere. It's been here for a while, and it's only going to continue to evolve. And so you either, get on that train, or it leaves without you. And I think it's totally fine to sort of like dip your toe in and, not be on every channel. Not every channel is good for every business, but to just be there in some capacity. If you don't have the ability to post every day, that's fine. Can you post once a week, every week? Then start with that. Or can you only post once a month? But if you do it every month, that's, just finding out what you can do consistently, and then starting there is huge. And then I would say another big mistake would be to just like ignore your profiles and, not updating your about us or leaving things blank, right? Like on LinkedIn, you've got the space for your logo, and then there's the banner image, like making sure that you've got everything filled out. And I think the other big thing would be to not be checking like your Google My Business page to make sure everything's correct. I think just looking to see where you already are online and how you're showing up is huge. Just to make sure that you are presenting accurate information, and also just see like what is being said about you in reviews, and just sort of taking all that in and seeing what it is you can do to change that.
I agree with everything. As a content marketer, if you don't have time to invest, or you find that that particular channel is not where your core customer is, definitely at least make sure everything is up to date and fresh. Because somebody might drop in at one point, and that the brand, so that represents the brand marketing side, which is definitely very, very important. So.
Yeah, I know I didn't really address like my experiences of learning languages, but I think kind of going back to that a little bit, learning languages and living abroad, it really just opens your perspective up to different realities. And I think that's maybe part of what has helped me just to see that, everyone has a story to tell and that there's a certain level of universality to everyone's stories. So when I would interview my coworkers, almost every single time they would say either like, oh, well, I don't have anything interesting to say, or, like that's not important. But I always learned something from each of my coworkers, and through that process of, just having a longer and more in-depth conversation with them. So I think it's just important to be open to more perspectives. And then when I would put the stories together and to kind of like a profile on them, I always sort of thought of it as kind of like a puzzle, and just how does it build on itself. And I don't know, I just always found that really interesting. But yeah, I think in terms of storytelling, just being open-minded to other perspectives. And again, I think that's where it's also helpful to have an outside perspective. If you're working with someone on your marketing, just understanding that there's validity to an outsider's perspective.
100%. As someone who's also lived abroad and kind of been a newcomer sometimes and an outsider very often, sometimes like I was given some advice like really early on in my career when I was in kind of that outside position. And it was great advice. And it was just, don't be afraid of kind of your quote ignorance. Like, use that to your advantage. Like use that as an excuse to ask all of the questions that you might otherwise be afraid to ask. And I have like just carried that with me of like, yeah, I can come in and be an outsider, but like I'm allowed to ask a lot of questions. And we'll learn a surprising amount sometimes, because sometimes people aren't comfortable asking certain questions. So kind of bring it in and be like, well, might as well ask because no one else will.
That's true. That's good. That's a good way to live. I think just staying curious and asking questions. It's really important.
100%.
Now, Whitney, you are a member of the Women in Manufacturing organization, WIM?
Yes, I am.
Not to be confused with Women in what we're doing, but it's a separate organization.
Yes.
And I'm curious, we had a chance to speak with the founder, president, Alison Grealis, and we talked a lot about the community aspect of WIM, and specifically the strength of the community within the chapters. And really wanted to get your take on your experience so far with the WIM community and at the Texas chapter.
Yeah, I'd love to share that. So I've been a member of WIM for about a year. I joined last October. I was very lucky to get a scholarship from Angela Thurman and her company Thurman Co. So I could finally sign up. It was something that I had been thinking about for a while, just wanting to get connected with some other, like-minded people who are in the industry, but outside of my organization. Again, just sort of like for that outsider perspective, and then also just to learn more about the industry. And yeah, that has been really so neat to go to events and just hear of all the different job functions that people have within manufacturing, and just everything that falls under the umbrella of manufacturing is so huge. And yeah, I've just learned so much from that. And that has been, I think, the most valuable thing for me, is just being able to go and meet with people who, we're in the same industry, but we do vastly different things. And that's so fascinating. And I think it just speaks also to, manufacturing is not just jobs on production floor, right? It takes everybody. We need like accounting and marketing, engineering. There are so many different types of roles within the industry, and it's really neat to get to come together and just see that diversity. And yeah, as far as how my marketing skills have translated to the chapter, I am a member of the WIM Texas chapter board. So I help with our social media. So creating content for our LinkedIn and Facebook channels, which is fun, since that had been sort of my primary job function before. It's nice to still have that connection to social media and just to get to share about the chapter and chapter events that way, and connect to the larger manufacturing community. It's really cool.
I'd like to, if you hold that note, that question, because Karen asked a question about manufacturers and success of social media, but I'm also curious of the success that you've seen with your chapter, with your social media efforts as well.
Yeah. We've had, we're a pretty large chapter. And I mean, Texas is such a huge state. And we've got several different large cities, right, that kind of all participate in manufacturing. So Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin. So we've definitely seen a lot of growth on our LinkedIn in terms of number of followers. One thing that the membership committee has really been focusing on is reaching out to those businesses that have corporate memberships, and just letting their employees know that, hey, you have a corporate membership, you can join our chapter and have access to like all of our events, and then also just events from women in manufacturing, anything across the United States, right? That's virtual. And the learning libraries are just so many great resources. So it's been really encouraging to see how that has grown, get really good engagement in terms of, comments and likes and shares on our posts. And I've seen that we've been growing on our Facebook channel as well. So, it's just really encouraging. It's nice to have another way to communicate and connect with members and potential members to just share about, upcoming events, especially just to make sure everyone knows like what resources are out there and available to them. So WIM National has like so many things. I know like the annual conference summit is coming up next week. And then beyond that, there are just so many initiatives that they do that, you have access to with your membership. So I want to make sure that people know that.
Yes, thanks for the promo for those events. Now, how would manufacturers measure success in their efforts? It's not a nonprofit; it's a little bit different. So I'm guessing there are some differences there.
Well, I think it really depends on what your initial goals are, right? And once you know what your goals of being on social media are, then you can figure out which metrics would make the most sense for you. So at my previous organization, the focus was really just on awareness and making ourselves known a little bit more outside of just oil and gas and to manufacturing more broadly. And we also had a network of distributors, representatives, and being able to share content and help them sort of grow their own customer base as well. So for us, we looked more at like the number of followers and also just engagement, like the reach of our content. So yeah, I would say it really just sort of depends on what you're trying to achieve and maybe even which channel you're on, because there are lots of companies who will maybe focus on LinkedIn just in terms of like building some thought leadership or, maybe trying to reach prospects. And then maybe they'll use Facebook, for example, as a way to communicate more with their employees and share more of those types of things. So I think it depends on the channel and it depends on what you're trying to achieve on each channel. But yeah, whatever it is that you are doing, I think as long as it's something that you can do consistently. So regardless of how frequently, as long as you can do it consistently. That's the big thing.
I'm off to the side here, like taking notes. Seriously. I have a lot of, like, a very large laundry list. And when it comes to marketing and social media, kind of like in my own work right now. So this has been really great.
Oh, yay. Well, I'm happy to talk like ad nauseum
Yeah, it's
about
like reaffirming a lot of the stuff that I've come across, or kind of like, I used to work in sales, and so we went very hand in hand with marketing. So I was kind of like, okay, yeah, validating.
Yeah.
So kind of speaking of events and things that, women in manufacturing or women's participating in, you are leading a workshop next month for Manufacturing News Inc. University, or MNI, which is something that we'd love to see. So you're going to be talking about mother-friendly environments and the Pump Act. Could you first explain kind of the Pump Act and tell us a little bit more about MNI University and the workshop?
Yeah. So MNI University was started last year. It ran in the month of October, which is Manufacturing Month. And I'm so excited that we're doing it again this year. And it's just a really great opportunity for free learning, free resources related to, all different kinds of topics for the manufacturing industry. For example, my boss, Lori Hybe, and I, we're going to be doing a webinar later in the month about the top 10 marketing mistakes that manufacturers make. So it really kind of runs the gamut. It's not just marketing. There's a little bit of everything. There's project management, sales. It's just a great opportunity to learn from some professionals in the space for free. And as you mentioned, I'll be doing a workshop about the Pump Act and mother-friendly work sites. Something that's, kind of near and dear to my heart as a mom. So PUMP stands for Providing Urgent Maternal Protections for Nursing Mothers. And the Pump Act was signed into law by President Biden in December of last year. And the enforcement period for it actually began earlier this year in April. So the Pump Act is really just about, and the webinar will be about, what are the federal requirements for employers in terms of supporting nursing mothers, and why it's important to comply with state and federal laws, and how making even really just small changes can improve the working environment and also prevent employees from leaving, and maybe even attract women to the workplace, which is really important, going back to the gray wave that we mentioned, and then also just the fact that women are kind of underrepresented in the industry. Just what do employers need to know, so that way they are, doing what they can to make manufacturing more women friendly.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning, I was kind of looking at some statistics around this, but a majority of women are going to be mothers of young children at some point during their career, and it's critical to provide them with kind of support, so that, again, you're not losing a lot of that talent and a lot of that kind of brain drain that we saw, kind of talent forced out of the workplace that we saw in the COVID pandemic. So I also noticed that your previous employer, Walker, was designated as a Texas mother-friendly work site. So do you know what policies or changes were made in order to achieve that label? I was also impressed to see that Texas mother-friendly work site labeling has been around since '95.
Yeah. So our former legal counsel worked to update our employee guide to include the language that was required to show that we were complying to be mother friendly. So that meant, like your work is flexible and you have break time for pumping. There's a private place that's not a bathroom where you can pump breast milk. There's access to a clean water supply and a place for pumping moms to safely store their breast milk. So it's really all that's required. The bar is very low.
Bars on the floor.
Basically, very, very low for companies to be certified as mother friendly. And then, at least in terms of the Texas program, there are other, like additional things that you can take to show that you're kind of going above and beyond to get kind of a different boost, I guess, in your certification. So we updated our employee guide. We had that policy in place, and it really just involved, some paperwork, honestly. And then that was it. And I think it just kind of goes to show, again, like the bar is pretty low in terms of being mother friendly, and just even having like that minimum really makes a big difference for pumping moms. So it doesn't require you to like build a whole new room or facility, lactation facility or anything, although that would be nice, right? So I think, it's definitely possible for employers to put policies in place and make some small adjustments in their facilities to make it more mother friendly. And so I know there are programs in lots of other states, like similar programs, and they, I think, really want people to become mother friendly, and so they make it pretty simple. And I know for Texas anyway, there's a directory, so you can search which businesses are mother friendly. So it's another way for companies to just kind of get their name out there too.
Yeah, I will say that as like someone kind of that needs to consider that, like, I don't have a family at this time, but that's certainly something that I would like, that it's 100% top of my mind when I'm looking at like employment of, would I have to potentially leave this job in order to, to accomplish some of the other goals that I have for myself in my life. Yeah. And I think a lot of young folks are thinking that. The younger generation is like, okay, how can I be my full self and have the career, like, have everything? Yeah. And so what, accommodations are being made to make this an attractive workplace, and to make, to make sure that your employees are retained and cared for while they're working for your company.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think it can be a big hurdle for moms who are maybe on FMLA, or, if they are fortunate to have maternity leave, just to think of coming back and all the logistics that are involved in being a pumping mom, and to know that your employer has already put thought into that and has a policy in place, and that, there's an actual space for you to take advantage of. I know that certainly would have been a load off of my mind. Again, little things can have a really big impact.
Grace and I also have talked, I'm sure you'll remember, Grace, we've had conversations around mother friendly that are for older children, like school age children.
Yep.
For example, we've talked about the idea of having women have school hours. So, providing women an opportunity to work while the children are at school, or even having easy access to public transport. Because not all women who are working may have access to a vehicle, but if they're taking public transit, they'd like a way to get to work that's safe, and where you don't have to walk a half an hour after you get off the bus.
Yeah. One of my, and I'll share this again because Carol, you brought it up. I think, one of my first jobs, we had, 4 different schedules to choose from. We were all getting 40 hours a week put in, but all the working moms kind of had different schedules. So they would come in slightly earlier, but they would leave every day at 4 p.m. To go, or 3 p.m. to get their kids. And the rest of the group that, had older children or didn't need to leave that early, we'd work until like 6:30, but then we could leave Friday at noon. So for, I was single and attached, like, great, this is perfect. I get an extra long weekend, but I'm working a few extra hours every day, and that's fine. But it was, everything flowed so seamlessly, and it was just really lovely to see that, like, oh, this accommodation is being made. All the work is still getting done. Everyone's still together working happily, and, they just don't get to leave earlier on Fridays, but their other needs are being met. So it was a great way to see that in practice and being fully taken advantage of.
Yeah, I think the flexibility is huge. And I think that's a big part of why remote work really kind of exploded during the pandemic, especially for working moms, just having that flexibility to just be able to handle the inevitable things that come up, when you have kids in school or young kids. That's huge.
Okay, so Whitney, we have a stat that we've been sharing with all the women in this series, and it actually comes from a Women in Manufacturing partnership with Axometry, and it's the 2023 Career Advancement in Manufacturing Report. And I think for us, for Grace and I, what was significant was really the stats really haven't changed much since 2021. And that one in 3 manufacturing professionals are women, and 1 in 4 manufacturing leaders are women. And we wanted to take some time to talk about this stat and whatever around it you like to address. We can.
Yeah, if I could just jump in before Whitney you take over, and I think I was doing a little self-reflecting as we were talking about this, kind of on, you were just mentioned, we were just talking about like mother-friendly policies in the workplace. And I swear my initial reaction was like, that doesn't seem necessary in manufacturing. And I had to really kind of check that kind of, it was like deep-seated kind of assumption about the industry that's still there after being, in the industry sometimes. And I was like, well, of course it's necessary. Hold on. And kind of like looking at those assumptions. But I think that looking in some of these statistics of, it's still very much a male-dominated industry, really helps maintain oftentimes those stereotypes of, or that kind of, for me, we're coming up of like, why would you need to like, pumping protections in like manufacturing? And believe me, I'm thrilled to have them across the board.
Yeah.
But I think this statistic kind of like really came into a new light based on my own kind of reactions to some of the stuff that we were talking about today, right? So I want to kind of be transparent there, but also bring that in as one of the impacts of having kind of that lower representation. Anyway, so I'll toss it over to you.
Yeah. I think, like you said, since it's a male-dominated industry, I think it sort of makes sense then that there wouldn't be very much consideration given to the needs of female employees, because that's outside of their scope, right? And that's where, just having like that diversity of opinion, I think in leadership is really helpful, or getting some kind of outside opinion too. And even looking to other industries to see, what are they doing? How's their workforce? Are they growing? Do they have more women in leadership roles? And, what are they doing differently? You think about education. So education has long been a woman-dominated field, in large part because of the schedule, right? Where you get summers off, quote unquote, even though you're still working during the summer. But, so moms can be home with their kids, and then they, the day will likely end earlier, and, having that type of schedule. And so just understanding, okay, well, that's what's important to a lot of, or like at least a fraction, right, of working women. And how are we able to build in some flexibility ourselves to open up positions, for a more diverse workforce? If you're going to say that you have to work 8 to 5 in person every day, you're going to be cutting out a good chunk of your applicant pool by just being so restrictive. And obviously certain roles, will have to be, I think stricter in that sense, but not everything needs to be. And is there the possibility that some things could be hybrid or remote, and then you broaden your talent pool even more, right? You're not limited to just like geographically limited to people in your area. So I don't really know what needs to happen for there to be that perspective shift, but yeah.
Well, I think it all comes back to manufacturers telling their stories, and especially those who are taking those steps to kind of make their workplace more attractive, to people of all, creeds and life stages. Some of the work that I was involved in just a little while ago was doing a transportation equity study in a rural area, but a place that had a lot of manufacturing jobs and people from, it brought in people from a wide geographic area. And sometimes they didn't have vehicles or something that would also leave their kids without a way to get to school.
Right.
So some of the manufacturing companies said, all right, well, we'll take your kids to school. So they would like charter a bus, and there would be some accommodation provided for those kids to make sure that they got safely where they needed to go. And so like those kind of stories, right?
Yeah.
What are people doing to make it possible? What benefits are they seeing in return? And I think that really comes back to that marketing piece of like, hey, look at us. Like our people are what makes us different. And this is how we kind of work with our people to, so that they can, be their best selves at work and at home. And this is the benefits that we're seeing. So
yeah, I agree with that. I think, maybe if they think of it kind of like a case study, right? Like do sort of a case study on yourself and then share that, like sharing the data. I feel like some manufacturers too are very like, maybe not as willing to share what works well for them because of competition, right? Like they want to sort of keep a leg up. And I think it's important to remember that a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So whatever you're doing to improve things at your company, like you should be sharing those so other people can learn from you and make changes as well, and then just improve the industry as a whole. And then you also can
come work for you instead of the competition.
And then you're also positioning yourself as a leader, right, in terms of what you're doing and sharing that with others. So I really think it's just a win-win when you think about it.
So speaking of encouraging manufacturers to talk a little bit more about themselves and perhaps share some of the things that they're doing, you're working on a survey for manufacturers. So could you tell us a little bit more about that? And if people want to participate, where they can kind of reach out to you or contact you or fill out the survey?
Yes, that would be awesome. Feel free to DM me. I'm not on LinkedIn right now, so I can't. I'll try and drop the link in the chat.
We're gonna.
Yes.
If anyone watching on LinkedIn right now just clicks on your profile picture, they will be taken to your page.
Yes. So it's a survey that we are doing at Keystone Click. So that's the digital marketing agency I'm with now. We partnered with Audience Audit to develop this survey for manufacturers to learn about how things have really changed since the pandemic. What types of challenges are manufacturers facing now? Really, how has the buying process changed? What's going on with retention of your employees? How's it going attracting employees? A lot of things that we've talked about in this conversation, there are questions related to that just to kind of better understand what's going on in the industry. And we're looking to get, of course, as many responses as possible so we can have some really solid data to share and sort of tell that story of what's going on in the manufacturing industry right now. And that information is really valuable to like the whole industry. And then also if you are someone supporting the industry as some type of vendor, it's really going to be helpful to you to understand what challenges manufacturers are facing so you can, better meet their needs. So I do have a link to the survey. It's open through Thursday. If you participate, you can sign up into the sweepstakes to win a $500 Visa cash card. The survey shouldn't take any more than 15 minutes. So that's a pretty good deal, especially with inflation the way it is right now, right? You can maybe get like a week's worth of groceries. Right. We would love to have as many people participate as possible. Love all the insights. And, if you take it, pass it along to your coworkers or your friends in the industry. We'd be really grateful for that. Excellent. And we look forward to sharing the results too once we get all those compiled. So be on the lookout for those.
I'm excited to see them.
Actually, I wouldn't mind having you back to review those.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
If you think our audience can benefit from that, we can even do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we're approaching like 5 minutes. We try not to stick longer than an hour. So before we close, we usually like to have final thoughts and takeaways, and we leave that with the last thought with you, Whitney. So Grace, would you like to go?
Oh, sure. I think this just really reaffirms, I think we kind of culturally speak a lot about storytelling or kind of the importance of stories, but it's sometimes hard to bring that down into a practical place. I think oftentimes we're very drawn to different stories and we might not realize that's what's attracting us to like a certain author, YouTube series, or, a set of social media posts. But really at its essence, it's a great reminder that that's really what it is, and that it can be and is, simple, but it's also something that you have to continue to do over time. It's something that I'm currently trying to do here at my organization, of just how can we continue to tell our story, kind of, get out there, increase awareness. And I think that's really important for a lot of manufacturers, and, better understanding what they do, what they're contributing to their community, to their local economy, and beyond. Mm-hmm. So I'm just really, and thinking of, all the really cool things that people are doing that are going to upset, my own assumptions or things that I'm trying to unseat, right? About, what the industry is really like. And it's going to take those stories to, it's going to take a lot of those stories to help change people's mindsets. And so people just have to speak up. And so I think that's kind of my big takeaway. So thanks for this conversation. This was really, really fun and interesting.
Thank you, Grace. And I think for me, really the mother-friendly worksite, definitely a big takeaway for me today, and that you really don't need a huge investment to make the first steps. Mm-hmm. And, there's always room for improvement, but it's actually not a huge investment. And so if you'd like to learn more about that anywhere, I've got to say, I don't know if they have that in Canada. I'll have to do some investigating and drop something in the comments if I find something. So that's my takeaway for today. So Whitney, we'll leave you with the last word.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, from what I understand, a lot of other countries tend to be more advanced in terms of mother protections in the workplace than we are in the U.S. So I'd be interested to see what Canada has in place. But I think for me, there's this misconception that manufacturing is dark, dirty, and dangerous. And I think storytelling is where the industry can really dispel those myths and those misconceptions. And storytelling doesn't just have to be written; it can be visual, like through your social media presence, and taking advantage of that and just showing what it's actually like to be in manufacturing, and that it's it encompasses so much more than the average person thinks. And there's a great opportunity in the industry, I think, to really write a new story and draw people in and grow, so that we don't have to be concerned about a gray wave or a huge skills gap or knowledge gap. I think we can definitely overcome that with just a few simple steps.
I like the idea of writing a new story.
Mm-hmm.
Let's finish the day off with that. Thanks so much, Whitney, for being here today. We really appreciate your time and your knowledge and experience. We hope that some people can benefit from the conversation today. And for those that are listening in, if you are interested, you want to learn more about us, you can follow us on LinkedIn, Industry 4.0 Club, or industry40club.com, and subscribe to our newsletter in the footer on the website. So that's it, and we'd like to wish everyone a great rest of the day.
Thanks so much for having me.
I see Kathy in the comments. If you want to complete the survey, reach out to Whitney. So
yes, Kathy, I'll send you a message. Yay. Awesome.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.